Hello everyone, I'm Jess and welcome to my channel Buried in Ink. Today we're going to be working on a fountain pen ink palette for the month of March. And spoiler alert, but this is going to be very heavy on green today. So when I think of March, this is probably a little silly because I am from a very cold climate, although I have lived in a tropical climate for a long time. I think of spring. So I know it's still winter up north, and that you can still get snowstorms this time of year, but I think at the very least you get some of those false spring vibes, and you do start sometimes at least seeing, buds on the trees, some of the grass poking through the snow. If you're lucky, if you're a little further south, you might actually get more of a true spring this time of year. So here in South Florida, everything is pretty much green year round. But for whatever reason, March to me just feels green and spring. And I think St. Patrick's Day also maybe has something to do with that. So today's palette, I think I have 16 inks and only 4 of them are not going to be blatantly green. So hopefully you like greens, because that is really where we're going with this today. I've tried to choose a whole bunch of different greens so we can really explore different shades. Some of them, like usual, the first half of this will have shimmer and the second half will be shimmer free. So some of these will have some chroma shading elements, some of them will obviously have shimmer in different colors, and some of them are going to be a little bit more standard inks. So I'm going to be taking a look at different things. I guess another spoiler alert, this was not on purpose, but this palette is going to be very heavy, particularly the shimmer half of the palette, on Ferris wheel press inks. I'll bring in several different brands into the second half when we look at our standard inks, but there will be a lot of Ferris wheel press at first, so bear with me. But I think it's a really lovely selection of greens and then a few other colors that I think went really well with them. My tools that I'm going to use today are the same as my last video, so I'm keeping it very simple. I'm using 52 GSM Tomoe River paper with a guide sheet underneath. Other than that, I just have a Speedball B nib that I will be using to do some round swatches. And I have a glass dip pen from Handy Urbuck. I bought this on Etsy. It's a beautiful glass dip pen. I'll be using that for the short writing samples. I've got some water to dip my pens in. I use a toddler training cup that's silicone for my glass dip pen so that I don't accidentally chip it. And just an old t-shirt that I use to wipe my nibs. I also have a glass spray bottle of water in case I have a stubborn bit of ink on the nib off screen. And I think that's it. Oh, the only other thing, because I mentioned it in my last video, I do have another one of these candles from the Wicked collection that I'm stupidly excited about. This one is the green one, so I brought it out for my March palette. It's called Bewitching Banyan Forest, so it's kind of getting me in that March springy mood. I'm super into it. All right, so let's get started. Our first ink today is Down the Don Valley by Ferris Wheel Press. So I don't know if this ink is still available on Ferris Wheel Press's website or not. You might be able to still find it somewhere, but it is an older ink. This is what it looks like on the bottle. I will be using it with an ink carriage today so that I don't accidentally tip it over. And this is going to be a very vibrant light green with strong silver shimmer. I love how bright and springy this green is. It's a really, I think, just happy color. I love having a white nib on my glass dip pens. Not all of mine do, but I really, really love it. I love how you can see the color of the ink in those ink channels. Like, not only does it look pretty, but I like being able to see how much ink is actually still left on the nib. Like starting out with this ink. I feel like this has to be one of the like brighter greens in my collection that isn't like a lime green, which we will have some that I would consider lime later on in this palette. The next ink is also a Ferris wheel press ink, and this is Lures of the Loch. And I love Ferris wheel presses packaging in general. It's one of the things that they're really known for, but I love all the little lily pads on this one in particular, and just their art is so great. I love this little, I don't know if it's an alligator or a crocodile. They've got Nessie over here. Fantastic. This was part of the Fairy Tales collection. I think they called this their Bestiary collection. This one's also going to be fairly bright, not as bright as Down the Don Valley, but it's still a very vibrant green. And this one has rose gold shimmer. I did not get enough ink on there. Let's try again. There we go. So you can see we're kind of in the same color family as Down the Don Valley. This one will be a tiny bit richer. The nib on this glass dip pen, I am going to have a hard time fitting into a lot of these bottles. Probably could have picked a different pen, but this one just felt really nice for this palette. But I may be cursing myself as we go. This is a very round nib. Really nice. I doubt it's showing up on camera, but even though this is still very, very far from dry, I'm starting to see a little bit of that rose gold shimmer pop through already. Now for the next ink, I almost chose another Ferris wheel press ink called Emerald Gardens, but I do have an ink that is almost exactly the same that is not by Ferris wheel press, and because I had so many this month from Ferris wheel press, I decided to go with the other brand. So this is Diamine's Pine Needle, which I guess if you have Pine Needle and weren't sure if you needed Emerald Gardens, for most people, if you don't need all the inks like I do, most people are not going to need both inks. They are so similar. The base color is very similar and the shimmer is almost exactly the same as well. So if you were thinking about it, you probably only need one of the two. So this ink you can see is still kind of in the same color family. It's a slightly yellower green. This one is a little bit richer though than either Down the Don Valley or Lures of the Loch. And this one is going to have green shimmer. To me, sometimes, particularly in larger swatches, sometimes the shimmer looks kind of gold to me. I don't know. I don't think it was, maybe it was meant to. It says chameleon on the front, so maybe it is meant to look gold from one angle. Whereas I think Emerald Gardens is only green. So maybe that's the difference between the two inks, is that Pine Needle has the shimmer is a chameleon shimmer where it looks green from one angle and gold from the other. and Emerald Gardens is just green, but very, very similar. And this one, the mouth of the bottle is plenty wide for my nib, which is nice. So this is Diamine. This was from one of their ink vent calendars, and I can't remember for sure, but I want to say it was from the 2024 calendar. I put in a fairly large order in December from Cult Pens, and I think most of the Diamine inks that I picked up were from that calendar. I had kind of waited a while. They usually bring out the inks from the previous year's calendar around, I think, June or July. And I kept meaning to put in an order and just kind of never did. With tariffs, I kind of hemmed and hawed for a while. I really like to order Diamine inks from Cult Pens, even though I'm in the US. And they are a UK store because they have the best prices that I've found on Diamine. Diamine is a UK ink, so that makes sense. But they really do have, their prices are so much lower than US retailers. So usually what I'll do is I will wait. Cult Pens has a fairly high free shipping threshold to the United States, which I'm okay with. I usually just wait a while and don't put in as many orders and do bigger ones when I'm ready to. But wow, the tariffs were so bad on this order. I forget exactly what the cost was, but I probably won't be putting in another order for a while, unfortunately. Which is our fault, not theirs. Oh, should probably show you before I open it. So this next ink is also an older one. This is a Ferris wheel press Fairy Tales collection. This was part of their very first Fairy Tales collection, the Alice in Wonderland one, which I was so excited about because Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite stories of all time. This is called Twinkling Tea Party. Now this one, like Lords of the Loch, is going to have a rose gold shimmer, but this, the base color, is going to be a very deep forest green. So very different look than the other three so far. So this is a shade I don't use as often, but it's a really nice one to have in my collection. So you can see we're looking, this is much less yellow than the other three greens we've used thus far. Really rich. That is nice. I'm already starting to see some of that rose gold shimmer popping through as it starts to dry. So I did promise that there would be a few inks in this palette, not a lot, but a few, that will not be green. And the next four are going to be the non-green inks. Some of these still have some green elements to them, but at least the main color will not be green. So the very first one that we're going to take a look at is still a bit green. This one is Vinta's Gold Dust. The base color of this is, it's so hard to see because this ink has so much shimmer in it. It really does kind of cover up most of the base color, but it does appear to be fairly greenish. I don't know if you can tell, but I can even see it, like the tint on the bottle. But there's so much shimmer that you really can't tell. This one ends up, so you can see, I think, that green leaning. But by this time this dries, it will look almost entirely gold with just hints of like a patinaed green. And this ink is really interesting, I think. It reminds me of like an old statue, almost like the Statue of Liberty or something, but those old statues where they get that green patina, but the majority of it is still like a copper or a brass. See if we have enough ink. So as it starts to dry, that gold is already starting to overtake the green. And in the writing, I can barely see the green even when it's wet. But I feel like the green that it does have makes it fit really, really well into this palette. Really pretty. And although I wouldn't choose this if I was looking for just a true bright gold, I would probably pick like a Star Spattered Hill from Wearing Gold, or maybe Heart of Gold by Robert Oster. This is still a really good choice if you're looking for a gold that's slightly more complex. This next ink is another Ferris wheel press. This is called Age of Aurum. This is one that when it first came out, I was really disappointed. It's a brown ink, which traditionally are not my favorite inks. However, like Gold Dust, this one has such a strong gold shimmer that it pretty much covers up the base color. And as I was playing around with these inks, trying to figure out this palette, I actually started to appreciate this ink quite a bit more, which is one of the reasons that I do these palettes, is to use these more, these being my inks, to play around with them. And it kind of gives them a second chance too. Sometimes I will do an initial swatch, and if I don't love something right away, like I kind of put it into one of my ink storage systems and it just sits there. So by doing these palettes and sometimes choosing colors that wouldn't necessarily be my favorites or my go-tos because they fit a theme, ends up being really, really nice. It helps me think about the ink in a different way, or I just use it a little bit more and maybe use it on a different paper or with a different writing instrument and end up liking it a lot more. I want to use the things that I have, so I really enjoy when I find an ink that I kind of originally dismissed and then later find that I like a little bit more than I thought I did. It's already starting to look really pretty. The shimmer on this is fantastic. I hope this is showing up on camera, but this is just looking so nice. Vinta's Gold Dust. I can really see like just hints of that pretty greenish, like it's a really muddy green, kind of a brownish green already. But that with that gold looks so nice next to all of these greens. I really, really like it. The last two that I chose for the shimmer portion of this palette, I was trying to think of what colors, if I have to choose something other than green for March, like what looks good with green. And I decided the last few months I had kind of wanted to include an orange, and it just did not work with the colors that I was picking. So this month I decided orange looks so good with green. So I have a coral and an orange that we're going to use. The first one, I kind of hate the name of this ink, but I love this ink. This is called Oinking Embers. This was, again, part of Ferris Wheel Press's Fairy Tales collection. They did an entire series of the Three Little Pigs inks, which is kind of interesting. When I say an entire series, I don't know how many there actually were. I'd have to go back and look, but some of them they decided to do like one-offs. Others they had like fuller series. So the Alice in Wonderland one had several inks. They had I forget what the name of it is, but the like Wild Swans collection was another one, and then other ones they did like Bestiary, and Bestiary just kind of included a whole bunch of different fairy tales. So the reason I love this ink, I love coral inks, particularly pastel corals. I included a little more on this nib than I meant to, so I think I'm going to take a Q-tip and remove a little bit. It's going to be a little heavy. There. Another reason that I chose this specific ink for this palette wasn't just because it was kind of a coral or an orangey hue. And this is a slightly, when it comes to corals, I usually prefer corals that lean a little more pink than orange. This one is the opposite. It leans a little bit more orange than pink. But I felt, first of all, that that was really perfect with this palette. Not a good place for you, Lucy. But this ink also, it has, I forget what they call it. I think they call it a duochrome shimmer. And it is pink and green. So even though this is a coral ink, it has green shimmer. So I felt like it just fit really, really well in this palette. This is an ink that I also have had inked up for a very long time in one of my regular pens. I want to say it's called, Lucy left some of his fur behind for us. I think the pen that I keep this inked in is called, it's the Kaweco Classic Sport. It's the only Classic Sport that I have. I really prefer the All Sports. I like an aluminum pen rather than plastic. And I think it's called Frosted Mandarin, something like that. It's a pastel coral that's more orange leaning than pink. So this really was the perfect ink for it. I'm probably going to make a giant mess with this too. Yes, I definitely am. Whoops. It's okay. It's one thing I think this hobby teaches for those of us who have maybe some perfectionism issues. It kind of forces you to step back and accept imperfections, especially when you're just playing. So I think my prediction is coming true. I am starting to curse myself a little for picking this nib. And I chose so many of those tiny little Ferris wheel press bottles for today's palette. Only a few left though. I promise we will get to some other brands soon. Okay, a far from perfect writing sample, but it's on there. So I have found this to be a really well-behaved ink for how pale it is, and for being a shimmer ink, it has not clogged up my Kaweco once, and I keep it in there. I don't really use it a ton of the time, so it will go definitely sometimes a few weeks without being used, and I've never had a hard start with it, so definitely highly recommend this ink. I do find it to be fairly legible as well. I don't know if everyone would agree with me, but for being kind of a pastelish coral, I do find it to be fairly legible. The last shimmer that we have is another Ferris wheel press, and this one I love. This is one of their slightly newer ones. I think it came out last year. And this is called Lantern Crossing. This is a really vibrant orange. Vibrant but deep orange. And it has a wine shimmer. That's what Ferris Press is calling it. So I guess that means like a deep red or burgundy. I don't know, but it works really well. I don't use orange ink a lot of the time. It's not a color I usually gravitate towards, like in decor or other things. But for whatever reason, I really love a like a reddish orange ink. Or even like apricot oranges. It's going to be so gorgeous when it dries down. Starting to run out of ink on here. Oh, that's such a pretty color. Okay, so that is it for our shimmer half of the palette. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and get a new sheet set up for our non-shimmer inks, and I will be right back. All right, I have gotten all of the inks ready for the next half of this ink palette. These will all be non-shimmer inks. And we will have a lot more diversity with brand than we did in the first half. But again, spoiler alert, every single ink on this half is going to be green. So if you're not here for the greens, you might want to kind of fast forward through part of this section. I also love that our dirty dip water is already turning like a lime green. That makes me really happy. The very first ink we're going to use here, this is a pastel green. It's called Zuzmo, which I believe means lichen. This is an ink by Pennonia. This one is one that took me a while to find. There were a few pastel inks that this brand makes that I really like and saw some lovely photos of online, and then I could not find them. They were out of stock everywhere for the longest time. I think I finally ended up getting a bottle from Van Ness when it was in stock. So you can find it, it just seems like it's out of stock a lot. Now this ink is not going to be for everyone. It is very pastel, but I think it is really beautiful. It's got some really lovely chroma shading that we will see as it starts to dry. And again, like, I don't know if I'm the only person who gets excited about like really minor things like that, but I just love seeing all of this pale green ink on those white ink channels. I think that looks so cool. The next ink is another Ferris Press. This is the last Ferris Press one for this palette. But this is called Book of Botany. I love this ink. I also love the art on this one. All the little frogs make me so happy. I never really know how to describe this ink. I had a difficult time. I keep a very large spreadsheet of all of my inks, and I try to put a descriptor in for the type of color that it is. I don't just put in green for green ink. I try to put in whether it's like a grass green or an emerald green. And this one I find a little difficult to describe. So let me know if you have a good descriptor for this one, but I think it is really beautiful. I was really excited when this ink came out. I think I bought a few bottles so that I would never run out. So it's definitely not a yellow green, it's a more blue-based green. But I just don't know what to call this one. That is so pretty. I really love that this ink, I don't know, there's a quality to it that's very, very soft that I think you can see that almost reminds me a little bit of pastel inks, but this is very clearly not a pastel ink. But it just still has that softness to it. It's super legible. It's more of a medium toned ink as far as saturation. Got quite a bit of glitter shimmer on my fingers. But I love that it still keeps that softness that I like so much from the pastels. I also love that we're starting to see some of that chroma shading pop out from the Pennonia ink. That's a really fun one. And I love that we can even see it in kind of the scribble down here, not just in the larger swatch. Move our ink carriage out of the way now that we're done with Ferris wheel press. The next ink I wanted to take a look at is, this is IWI. I think it stands for Ink Writing Institute. I could have that wrong though. And this is called Waking of Insects. It was part of IWI's Color of Nature collection. I purchased one more from this collection that I really love. It's beautiful turquoise called Rainwater, and it ended up being the perfect match for my Sailor and Hachimanjia Jellyfish Aquarium pen, which was one of my Grail pens. Recently posted a video about that. Check it out if you're interested. But that ink ended up being the absolute perfect color match to that pen. Now, when I was playing around swatching this ink, when I was trying to decide on March's palette, I did have some issues with this ink feathering a little, so I'm curious to see if it will do that here or not. I don't know that it would feather badly in a pen. When I was playing around with these, I was doing fairly large swatches, and it's much easier to get feathering in a very large swatch. So we'll see how it performs here. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing some feathering here. I've never inked this into a pen. It's, I think, a fairly interesting green. That's why I purchased a full bottle of it. But I think you might need to use this in a drier writer to avoid that feathering, or maybe use on a very specific paper. This might be one to use on like Rhodia or Clairefontaine, maybe. Something that's got like a strong coating to the paper. I don't know. I also find the name of this one really interesting. It was one of the things that kind of tempted me to use it for this palette. I do not love insects. Not my thing. I was definitely, I like butterflies and stuff, but I'm not big into bugs in general. We have cockroaches here in Florida. They scare me very badly. I'm not a fan. But this idea of spring having not just things blooming, but insects, right, are also coming to life for places where they hibernate or die during the winter. So kind of interesting to think that like nature isn't just the beautiful parts that we want to think about, but maybe some other things as well. And of course, insects are a part of the ecosystem. They are very beneficial and necessary part of our ecosystems, although I'm not so sure about mosquitoes. Now this next one, I should have shown you the bottle before I started swatching. This is, oops, kind of a fun little ink splatter. This is Lindgrün, which I believe just means lime green, by Octopus Fluids. I really wanted to include, since I was doing so many greens, I felt like we needed some more limes in here. I do like a really good lime green. I usually only use them in the summer, but if I'm doing this many greens, I had to have some included here. Close this bottle and show you the front really quick. So this is just one of their basic collection. I really like this. I think it's really bright and fun. Here we go. A little bit of feathering on this one as well in the areas where I had more ink on the nib. Looks like a little around the edges of the swatch too. This one didn't do as badly as it did in the larger swatches I had. I'm actually fairly happy with it, but you can see the line on this is so much thicker than like Lichen or Book of Botany. So I still think this is one to maybe restrict to a drier writer or finer nibs maybe. So this next ink is going to be one from Birmingham Pen Co. This is a small company based out of Pittsburgh, and this is Lily Pad. This is a slightly darker ink. It goes on a little brighter and it dries down a bit murkier. Still one of our yellow toned greens. Our dirty ink water is getting more and more like olivey lime green. It's pretty. It's a lovely, rich green. I love how, at least wet, this almost looks like velvet. We're going to do one more lime green, and I couldn't help myself. I love this ink. This is Colorverse Albert. I didn't look up the meaning of this. I'm sure that they have obviously something with monkeys going to space would be my guess, but didn't know. Wow, look how much feathering we got there. All right, now I'm curious to see if this one's going to feather. I don't think I had feathering with this one in my other swatches, but we will see. So you can see this is a different lime than we had with Octopus Fluids. And I love this ink. This is something I would use, I would be more likely to use in the summer. This just like seems such a hot weather, bright, fun color. And I don't necessarily write with lime greens a lot, but I do like them. So we can see the Octopus Fluids version has a lot more yellow in it. They're both yellowy greens, but big difference between these two colors. It's one of the things I love so much about having fountain pen inks. When you use like gel pens, And you have one company who gives you a lime green gel pen. Even if you get to choose in different nib sizes and things like that, like they give you one lime green, and that's if you're lucky enough to get that much of a color range from that pen company. And when it comes to fountain pen ink, you can really get to the difference between which type of lime green do you want, or any color. But I just love that aspect of this hobby, how you can get any color you're dreaming of. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. And 2 more inks to go. This next one is a Troublemaker ink, which, what a cute brand name, right? And this one's called Hanging Rice. And this, it's a dark green, which is a little outside of what I usually go for. And I didn't buy this for a while. I was kind of on the fence about it because I usually use brighter, lighter, or more mid-toned greens. But I saw writing samples of this and swatches of this in multiple places online, I think over the course of like a year or two, and I loved every single one that I saw. So I finally broke down and bought a bottle, and I'm glad I did. I don't think I've actually inked it up yet, but I really do like this ink. Even though it's dark, I feel like it's not so deeply saturated that you can't tell it's green. I really don't like inks where if it's a purple or a green or even a blue, and when you use, a fine nib pen where it pretty much just looks black, that drives me nuts. If I was going to do that, I would just use a gel pen and go with it. I also don't really use a ton of black inks for fountain pens. For me, the whole point is to be able to see color and play with color. But this one, I feel like I can still always tell that it is green. And that will lighten up a tiny bit as it dries. I also love that Book of Botany is, you can see some of the other colors that kind of peek out, tiny bit of chroma shading in there even as it dries. I feel like this is one that just does not get as much attention as it deserves. Oh, so this last one I almost forgot to show you again. This is $10 Green by Robert Oster, and I feel like this is just a true green, true bright green. I feel like I needed one of those. This is kind of, I was thinking of March. This I feel like is like a really good like St. Patrick's Day green. Kelly green, I guess. And if you're going to do a March palette that's based on greens, I feel like you have to have a really good St. Patty's Day green. So this is my attempt. Way too much ink. And that is our completed palette. So I'm going to go ahead and let all these dry so that we can come back and take a look at everything once it's completely dry and see what these colors actually look like. All right, we are back. Everything is pretty well dried by now. I think we might have a little bit of dampness in these bottom two, but we are pretty much there. So let's take a close-up. First of all, this is the greenest palette I've ever done. It almost looks a little bit more like a green color exploration, and I'm not mad about that. So hopefully you guys liked the greens. So let's take a close-up look at our shimmer palette. The first one was Down the Dawn Valley Ferris wheel press with that silver shimmer. Really bright and fun. And then we have Lures of the Loch, a little darker, still a vibrant green. But I feel like this one works really well with like the cover art. It's not a book. With the box art that they had on there, the lily pads. Like this makes me think of a lily pad. That beautiful green with that rose gold shimmer. Perfect. Diamine's Pine Needle. You can see that duochrome shimmer. I think I can see both the green and the gold in there. Really lovely color, lots of shimmer. Twinkling Tea Party. So this one is our first one that is not a more yellow leaning green. Much darker, still has that rose gold shimmer. I feel like it's much more subtle than Lures of the Loch. Although in some of the really large swatches I've done, that shimmer showed up much stronger. I didn't put on too much ink for this swatch. And it's showing up in the writing sample, but it's, again, more subtle. It's definitely there. I think you can see it. But I don't know if there's, maybe it's smaller shimmer particles than some of the others. I feel like these ones in Lures of the Loch look like they are larger shimmer particles. So it looks more like a light shimmer or almost a pearlescent coating rather than like chunks of glitter. And gold dust, we have big old chunks in this one, right? This is a shimmer bomb. But especially next to all of the other greens, it looks so pretty and green. Like it's just a nice patina type color with a ton of gold shimmer. Age of Aurum, I think looks really, really nice with gold dust. And just that strong, strong gold shimmer. Really nice. This one's growing on me, you guys. Oinking Embers, this one is a favorite for me. That pale coral. Had a few issues with my writing sample. I had too little on the nib, then too much. I had splotches, but that's all okay. I actually kind of like these little splashes that the ink made. It's kind of pretty. We've got that green shimmer showing up in Lantern Crossing. This one is so stunning, you guys. I love that base color, that like kind of reddish orange. It's a deep, warm color. And then that wine shimmer, I don't know. It's just really pretty together. And I like how this looks with our greens. And then our standard inks. So we have Pennonia's Lichen. I love the chromatography in this. The chroma shading. So pretty. You can see some pinks in there, pinky purples. There's blue in there. It's so nice. And I just love that it's pastel. Book of Botany might be my favorite ink in this entire collection. I am obsessed with this, and I'm a little bummed the chroma shading isn't showing up as well on camera as it is in real life. You can definitely see it, but in real life, there's a little bit more to it. And it is so pretty. You can definitely see the blues and the scribble down here. I need to ink this up soon. I am really, really in love with this ink. Waking of Insects. So this one is showing up a little bit paler in real life. And in real life, it actually looks, it's almost slightly like a beigey green. Not enough that I would call it a khaki. But this is a fairly unique color in my collection. I would say it might be kind of similar to Warrengold's Peter Pan. It is not showing up quite the same on camera as it looks in person. But it is very lovely. It's a little paler and a little beiger in real life. Octopus Fluids Lime Green. We definitely had a lot of feathering in that swatch. I don't remember that when I was swatching it before, but this might be one to take a little care with, as well as Waking of Insects. You can see how fat that line is and that there is quite a bit of feathering. So I think both of these might be best paired with a drier rider and maybe a finer nib. Birmingham Pen Co's Lily Pad. This one I think still just kind of reminds me of velvet. It is a really rich, pretty color. I can completely see where the name came in for this one. I think it does kind of look like something that you might find growing in a swamp, that like rich vegetal plant life. Perfect for spring. Albert, this is more of a summer color, but I really wanted some lime greens in this palette, and this is just such a happy color. I love this so much. Hanging Rice. This is another one that I guess kind of reminds me a little bit of like a deep green velvet. Very, very beautiful. It's a little darker on camera than it is in real life, particularly in the writing sample. I'm laughing at myself a little bit. I'm talking about how I don't like things that look black, and it almost does look black on camera. It's definitely green in real life. And $10 Green by Robert Oster. This is, I think, a perfect shamrock green, that perfect St. Patty's Day green, Kelly green. It is bright. It is a true green. And that's it for March. So I will be doing, like I do every month, I will do a larger swatch and longer writing sample of every single one of these inks that I will then put into one of my ink journals. And at the end of March, I will go ahead and post an ink journal flip through so you can see more of these inks, all of these inks actually, in a longer format if you want to see more of them, what it looks like with a little bit more writing, with a larger ink swatch. Take a look at that video when I post that later in the month. And until then, I hope if you liked this video, please pop a like in, hit subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. You'll see more of my content. And I hope you have a great day. I look forward to seeing you soon.